up, guys? Four-wheeler doctor back again. Tonight we're working on getting this rm85 motor torn down. I got another video where I took it off the bike. Leave a link up here. And now we're going to take it apart. It's making a bad rattling noise. I'm thinking the owner said that it was the person that the original owner did not run any oil in it, which he had said it was the transmission oil, which I don't really see where that would make one knock. I'm thinking it was more along the lines of the oil in the premix, the gas, and mess something up with the piston or whatever, because this did have a new head on it fairly recently, so hopefully there's nothing wrong with the head, but it's making a bad knock, so I'm thinking something's going on with the crank. Start off with what I'm going to do. I think I might just go ahead and pull this top end off just to see what's going on up there. If the bottom end is not bad, we may let it go. So I'm going to pull these. I think these are 12mm acorn bolts on the top here, and also these, I think I'm going to have to take these four 8mm bolts off here for the power valve, and maybe take these four off the front here too. I'm not real sure. I hadn't tore one of these motors down in a long time, so I can't really remember, but we'll see what we can do. I'll get the power valve cover off, this front cover off, and go ahead and pull these acorn bolts off and cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright guys, I got all the bolts out of this thing. 12mm acorns here, 12mm on here. You had to take that power valve cover off to get to that bolt. I'm thinking I'm going to have to take that 8mm bolt, or yeah, I think that's a bolt out of there. Just wanted to show pulling this thing apart. Doesn't really look too bad. The thing would run. So yeah, I'm going to take that 8mm out of that little power valve arm there. You can slide the arm off just like that. Alright, and then we can slide the cylinder off, I think. Gasket's holding or something over here. Grab a screwdriver, see if I can pry up on it just a little bit. Just barely holding right here. Alright, then that slides right off of there. See, your little power valve arm comes out. Piston comes out. Cylinder doesn't look bad at all. Piston really don't either. But the crank, that's what you call a spun rod bearing. So it's gonna need a crankshaft. Not real sure what else, but we'll see. Cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright guys, next thing we're gonna do is remove the Kickstart. I think this is an aftermarket bolt, but it's a 10mm. Kickstart slides right off. You remove that. And like I said, it's been a little while since I took one of these apart, so I'm not real sure if I have to take the water pump off or not. Normally on a ATV, I usually don't mess with the water pump. We'll pull it off here just to make sure there's not an impeller or something in there we have to take off as well. So 4 bolts on that. There are different lengths. The 2 in here, sorry, well dang, where did they, two here are the long ones, 2 here are short ones. And that's got a pretty good seal on it. I believe somebody done put some RTV on it. So wiggle that thing off. There you go. So you get your water pump off. It doesn't look like I had to pull that off, but we'll go ahead and do it anyway. Put that in the cardboard, and then we'll start taking these bolts out around this clutch cover. Just all the 8mm. This thing's got a busted clutch cover, so that's another thing I'm gonna have to replace on it. So we'll have to chip around the JB weld on that one to get it out. So let me get all these bolts out and cut the camera back on right before I take it apart. Alright guys, we're going to pull this cover off now. I got all the bolts loose. This case here is seen its better days, as you can see. So we'll be see about getting another one of those. I can't remember on this one if I need to keep the Kickstart shaft down in there. I'm thinking I do. So push on it with your hand as you pull this cover off. The Kickstart does have a washer on it there. So stick that with your Kickstart. See, it's a pretty new gasket. It's a shame that this thing's got to be tore back down after it was apparently just rebuilt. So, all right, this is the clutch here. We're gonna pull it off. These 5 8mm bolts, and then you can get to the center bolt in there to remove it. So I'll do that next, and then we'll look at getting these gears off of this thing. Alright guys, got the 4 bolts out and springs too. They all come out together like that. Then take and pull up on this top cover. Hang on to your little plunger here. That's actually what activates your clutch. And now we're here at the transmission bolt here for the clutch. It's got a tab on it that's bent down. You need to straighten that thing out so you can get the nut. I might have said bolt, but this is actually a nut. So you can get the nut off of there. So just bend that back with a screwdriver and a hammer. I'm thinking that's going to be about maybe a 21-22mm. A little bit bigger than that. A little bit smaller than that. See, 22. Started second guessing myself there, but it's a 22. So take the impact, run that nut off of there, and then I will cut the camera back on right before I pull the clutch off. Alright guys, now we're going to pull the clutch off. What you need to do is pull the friction disc out first. There's a washer in here that you got to get lined up over the splines, or it won't come off. So get your washer off, then pull your basket off. And the basket does have a, I might have to drop all this stuff, it does have a washer on the back side of it as well. All my friction plates are getting all twisted up now. There we go, got them all back together. So we got a washer here. Make sure you hang on to that. I'll probably get a zip tie and just zip tie all this stuff together so we don't lose it. Alright, so there we are, down to the all these counter gears and all this stuff. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to pull these 2 gears off. That one's got a snap ring on it. This one doesn't. It should slide right off here just like that. And that's our Kickstart. Won't have to do anything with it. We'll just need to hang on to the gear. And it does have a washer on the back side of it as well. So pull those 2 off, then I'm going to flip around to the other side, pull the other cover off so we can get the rest of the transmission pieces out of here too. Alright, cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright, over here on the left side now, I'm going to start off by pulling this Kickstart off. 10mm bolt on it. I mean, not Kickstart, the shifter bolt. Pull that off. This Stator cover over here looks like it's been changed. At least the bolts have been changed out on it. They're 10mm on here, but I would about guess the original factory ones were probably 8mm, and it should pull right off of there. Got a little gasket on it. It's actually a rubber gasket, so we can reuse that and stick our other bolts in the cardboard. Alright, now going to pull the gear off here, snap ring there, get it off, and probably go ahead and loosen this nut up here on this flywheel and remove the flywheel as well. So let me get those 2 things done, and then we'll see what we got to do next. Alright guys, when I left off, I was trying to get this flywheel, magneto, whatever they call it, off. I did take the We'll call this the Stator. I did take it off 2 bolts on it, and I marked the locations that it was just so we make sure I get our timing back right. I made a tool for this and it didn't quite work right. Little puller thing here I just rigged up out of a piece of metal, and so as a last resort I decided to just try a little 3-jaw puller I had here, which is a 4-inch 3-jaw, and put the nut back on there so that I made sure I didn't mess the end of it up, and popped it right off. So it came right off, no problem. So got that off now. Now we can start out by taking out all these bolts around here to get this side cover loosened up. I believe there's going to be a couple more bolts on the other side, but I'm going to go ahead and pull all these 8mm headed bolts off and flip over to the other side and see what we got to take off of it there. Cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright guys, back on this little RM85. I'm flip this thing around to the clutch side. We'll start taking some of these gears and stuff off over here. First thing we're going to start off taking off is this shifter linkage here. Goes to your foot shifter. And next thing is this power valve gear. You got to kind of work this power valve lever a little bit just to get it off. It just comes right off. This see the little groove there, and that's what lines up with this little pin here on your power valve. So when you put that back together, I'm gonna have to take this nut off of here to get the crankshaft out. So I'll find me a socket that'll fit that, pull that off in a minute. I think we can leave the kickstart gear and all that in here. Next thing we need to pull off is this starter or shifter linkage here. This is very similar to the ones I run into on some 4-wheelers. Use them like this. Or actually some older ones, 304 tracks that I just did the other day, has a linkage very similar to this one. This thing has a Phillips head screw that you have to remove, actually 2 of them. They have some Loctite on them. Make sure we want to get a good bit, number 3 Phillips bit, and I'm not going to say it's impossible to remove with a hand screwdriver, but it's close to it. And see, that one there is actually trying to twist out because my bit's not real good. So let me find me another bit, and I may hit that thing with a little bit of heat to try to break that the Loctite loose. So let me grab my little torch and get me a good bit, and I'll jump back on this one. Alright guys, just heat the head of that bolt up just a little bit. See if we can get the Loctite to break loose. I did get a little bit better bit. I may end up having to drop back to a number 2. Yeah, I think I am, because that one's not working real good. So see what this number 2 will do with it. Sits in there a little bit deeper. Still ain't wanting to twist out. Heat it up a little bit more. Alright guys, I'm going to try one more thing in my arsenal of tools to get stuck bolts out. This is called an impact driver. It's I actually got a 3-inch or a number 3 Phillips bit in here, but it has a 1/2-inch drive socket as well as a ratchet end, as well as a little driver adapter here. And the way this thing works is you stick it in your bolt or screw or whatever you're dealing with, and take a hammer and hit the end of it. And as you hit it, it actually twists the bolt and pushes down at the same time. I think this one here might be too far gone. It's done chewed the whole inside of it out of it. So now we're gonna have to drop back and punt, and looks like I'm probably gonna end up having to drill this thing out. You can see that's what it's supposed to look like. That's what we got. So let me break out the drill bits, get this thing out of here. I guess I probably should have used that impact driver to start off with. I just didn't figure on this bolt being that tight. So let me get it out, and I'll cut the camera back on once I get this plate removed. Well guys, it wasn't as bad as I thought. I actually stuck the impact driver in it and just figured I'd give it a shot and try to unscrew the thing. And what the hey, the bolt come off, or screw came off. I don't have a pair of pliers here, so we're going to use these snap ring pliers here. Just pick that up because I assume it's still fairly hot, as well as this plate. This is just what you call using the tools that you got right here in front of you, because these snap ring pliers are not made to be regular pliers. Well, I'll probably just cause me more harm than good, but anyway, let me stick some gloves on because I know this thing's gonna be hot, and get this off. As you can see, the little fingers just went flying from what I didn't really want to happen out the ends of here. Biggest thing on here is you don't want to lose your springs. There's two little springs in here. God, this thing is hot. I'm gonna have to sit this down and cut the camera back on in a sec because it is a blazing hot. Get all the pieces out of here and I'll show you how to put it back together. Alright guys, now the little part here that fell apart, it's still a little bit warm, but I'm gonna still try to work with it. What you got here is there's two springs down in that little hole there, and then one down here. Make sure they're stuck in there. Then take these two little pins, they look like Monopoly pieces, Monopoly people. Stick those into the springs with the small end going into the spring, small end going in first, like that. And then you take these little arms here, not sure which way these go exactly, but I'll figure it out. So the arm has a rounded off end and a flat end. The rounded off end goes up on the top away from the spring, and the flat end goes down toward the bottom, and the groove actually lines up with that little pin. I hope that makes sense. Let me get this other one in here and I'll show you a little bit better. That right there, and you can see where the groove lines up. And what I like to do on these things is take a zip tie around them just to try to hold it all together. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, if I've lost a lot larger parts than these, so that's the last thing I needed, to get these things floating around in the bin over there, the parts bin, and me not being able to find them when I get ready to put it back together. So that's what I do, stick them all together like that, and then you don't have to worry about it. Alright, let me get this thing flipped around and cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright guys, next thing we'll do is take this center bolt out of the shift drum here. So it's 12 millimeter. Hopefully this impact's gonna break it loose. Yep. So break that out and pull it up out of there. This outer piece will come off as well, and then that arm will kick down. Hang on to that. And next thing I'm going to do is try to get this nut off of the crankshaft. Not real sure what size that is. Bigger than 19. We might try 21. Maybe 22. Yep, 22 it is. Well, I'm assuming this thing is a regular left-handed threads. So we're going to hit it with the impact and see. Well, it might not be. Guys, I thought I started the camera a while ago, but I didn't. So this is the gear that I pulled off of the crankshaft here. This bolt is reverse thread. So turn it to your right to loosen it up. So you got the nut, the washer, the gear, and then this spacer slides in here. Stick all those together with a zip tie. And the next thing I'm going to remove is going to be these bolts out of this reed valve here. Have to pull that out. I'm not real sure if I'm gonna be able to set this thing up. We had to pull those out because you can see where the crack in the crankshaft, our crankcase is here. It's got to separate across there, so it'll never come apart with them 4 bolts in there. So let me get those bolts out, and then we'll about be ready to split this thing apart. Alright guys, got the reed unbolted here, and it just comes off like this, the plastic cover, and then your reed holder here. Those are your reeds. So just drop that first and then pick it back up and put it back together just like it came. This thing does have a notch that goes to the top, so helps you keep all that together. Alright, so I think that is everything that I need to take off before I can separate this case. And it has been a right little while since I did one of these 2-stroke engines, and I'm not 100% sure which end of the case comes out. I'm assuming this is going to be the part that's going to come up. All the other gears and everything will stay in there. That is just an assumption on my part, so if it don't work out, we can say I assumed wrong. So let me see if I can get something in here to pry these halves apart. I'm hoping I got all the bolts out of this thing. Let me do it once over here just to make sure. Looks like it on this side. I think I've already checked the other side. Just got to get in here to somewhere I can pry between the two. It's coming apart, but it seems like it's a little stiff down here on the bottom. Let me flip this thing over and make absolutely sure we got all the bolts out, because I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, I've tried to take one of these apart with a bolt left in it, and you just can't get it apart. And that looks like everything. So, like my daddy used to say, don't force it, get a bigger hammer. Maybe we just need to pry it a little more. It's actually getting a little crack in it there. Give me a small screwdriver and I'll see if I can stick it in this crack and we can work our way around. Work our way around to get this thing pried open. It sure ain't wanting to open up very easy. I will say that. It's very, very tight. That's where I think I've left a bolt off somewhere, but I do not see one. Unless they're just hung on the bearing, the crankshaft just hung on the bearings. That does happen from time to time. See if I can get this Woodruff key out. This thing ain't wanting to come real easy. It is coming, but it ain't wanting to come real easy. There it is. Got the key out. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to stick another screwdriver in here and pry this thing all the way around, because it does not want to come apart very easily. Goodness gracious. I think I finally got it. I held up on the case a little bit here, tapped on this crankshaft with the hammer, and Lord, it finally come off. I have never in my life seen two crankcases that were stuck together like these two. And I'm thinking it all came from this crankshaft being up in this bearing right here, but goodness gracious, that was tight. Alright, so there you go. Got that crankcase off, crankcase half off. You can still see here, there's our culprit with the whole knock in this thing. Now we'll pull the transmission out of here. Pretty simple little transmission. It's actually got two sets of shift forks on it. Pull up on this pin here, pull up on the other one, let it slide out. Then you can get your little shift drum out. I'm gonna have to grab me a little box to put these in, but we'll lay them here on the cart in the meantime. There's your two shift forks for your rear set of gears. There's your one shift fork for your front set of gears. And then maybe I can pull all these out at one time. Keeps everything from falling apart. I will say there is one washer here on this the rear set of gears that you want to hang on to. Alright, well, it's going to come out as two separate pieces. So maybe it's going to come out. There you go. There's your front set of gears all in one piece. I like to try to keep those together just so you don't have to try to figure out where they go later. They all come apart. This set of gears here is not coming off. Let me tap this with the hammer. Stuck in the bearing as well. Not very hard though. I barely even have to hit it and it's moving. But it's not moving enough to get the gears out. Wiggle it around some. There again, this would be another great instance when I could, if I had three sets of hands, I could have held a socket up there and tapped that on out. But anyway, there's your second set of gears. Put those in a box. And then all you're left to do is to press this crank out. In this case, since the crank is already shot, I'm going to use a very delicate pressing tool called a hammer and just knock this thing out of here. We're going to try it with this rubber hammer, but God, if the bearing on this side is tight as the one on the other side, we'll never get it out with this, but I'll give it a shot. It looks like it might be, because I don't even think it's moved. So I may have to put this thing in the press it out of there, and then we'll start putting it back together. I'm gonna get a little crankshaft kit ordered for this thing. Probably just gonna put a set of rings in it. We're gonna need some gaskets too, because I messed up those gaskets. So let me get all those parts ordered. Next time I cut the camera back on, we'll be putting it back together. Guys, thanks for checking my video out. Have a good night, and hit the like button and subscribe.